All right, welcome in everyone. Get ready for a deep dive. And this time, we're heading straight into the wake of Hurricane Milton down in Florida. But get this, we're not just talking about the usual wind and rain. Oh no. This is about the unexpected side effects, the things you wouldn't believe unless you saw the pictures.
You always hear about the hurricane itself, right? But the aftermath, that's when things get really interesting. It's like the world's been shaken up and you're seeing a whole new side of things.
It's like someone hit the reset button, especially in Florida. Case in point, alligators. They're kind of Florida staple, sure, but Hurricane Milton took it to a whole new level.
There's this wild video going around North Fort Myers, I think. This alligator is going full on beast mode on a car tire. Like chumping, thrashing, you name it. It's intense.
You see that, and it really hits you. This is what happens when nature gets displaced. Floodwaters come rushing in, and these gators are forced out of their element. They end up in neighborhoods, people's yards, even inside houses, looking for any dry ground they can find. I bet. And suddenly, that Florida man meme takes on a whole new meaning. But on a serious note, it makes you think about the ripple effects, right? We talk about climate change, sea levels rising, but then you've got displaced wildlife adding to the chaos. That's a whole other layer of complexity.
Absolutely. And you start to see the connections, how ecosystems are intertwined, disrupt one part, and it throws the whole system off balance. These extreme weather events, they're like a magnifying glass on that interconnectedness.
It's a stark reminder that climate change isn't some far-off threat. It's changing the game right now. But, all right, alligators aside, Hurricane Milton definitely packed a punch in more traditional ways too. Boats. Forget about it, tossed around like bath toys.
Yeah.
There are pictures of a stadium roof peeled back like a sardine can, and don't even get me started on the downed trees and power lines.
The force of these storms is something else. We're talking winds with enough power to rip billboards off buildings, literally turn them into projectiles. There was that incident in Bradenton where a billboard came crashing down on an apartment building during the storm.
Talk about adding insult to injury, right?
Yeah.
And it reminds you that even these structures we build, the things we think are solid and dependable, they're no match for Mother Nature when she's angry. And it wasn't just the coast getting hammered either. Milton brought serious flooding inland too. The Orange County Sheriff's Office, they released footage of their officers wading through chest-deep water, rescuing people trapped in a mobile home park.
And that's the thing about inland flooding. It often flies under the radar compared to the storm surge. But heavy rainfall, rivers overflowing, that can be just as dangerous, especially for communities that aren't prepared for it.
It's easy to get caught up in these crazy stories, the sheer scale of it all. But it's important to remember the human cost, right? This storm, it's left people picking up the pieces, dealing with loss, and that's a whole other side of the story.
It is. And tragically, there have been fatalities. There was that elderly housing community in South Florida. They got hit hard, a direct hit from a tornado. The hurricane spawned it, just ripped right through. A tough reminder that these storms, they're not just natural phenomena, they have very real consequences.
Absolutely. And it makes you think about preparedness, especially for those who are most vulnerable. Having those evacuation plans in place, making sure there's support for communities that need it most. Speaking of vulnerable, did you hear about the tornado that touched down near Mar-a-Lago?
I did. It sounds like the damage was minimal, thankfully. But still, talk about a close call.
Right. I mean, it just goes to show these storms, they don't play favorites. It doesn't matter who you are, where you live. Nature has a way of reminding us who's boss.
Exactly. And it reinforces that we all need to heed the warnings, take these threats seriously, because you never know when it might be your community in the path of a storm.
It's like Mother Nature's way of saying, pay attention. But shifting gears a bit, one of the most concerning things I've been reading about is the situation with Florida's barrier islands. Those slender strips of land, they took a direct hit from Milton's fury, and now there's limited access because of the damaged bridges and infrastructure.
Those barrier islands, they're beautiful, but so vulnerable during hurricanes. You think about places like Clearwater Beach, Treasure Island, they're basically sandbars caught between the mainland and the open ocean. And when that storm surge
It's like a
hits,
bulldozer, right? Just sweeps right over them.
exactly. And the thing is, with the bridges still down, it's not like you can just drive over and check on things. It makes you wonder, what's the situation there now? How bad is the damage? What about the people who couldn't or wouldn't evacuate?
It's unsettling to think about, all those unknowns. And it highlights how important those evacuation routes are, how vital it is to have a plan when these storms hit.
It really does. And it speaks to the bigger picture, the need for more resilient infrastructure in these vulnerable coastal areas. And not just infrastructure, but communication systems too, making sure people have access to accurate information before, during, and after a storm.
Because in those moments, knowledge is power, right? Knowing what's happening, what to expect, it can make all the difference.
Yeah.
But it feels like with Hurricane Milton, we're still just scratching the surface. From alligators on the loose to the uncertainties surrounding the barrier islands, this storm has been a crash course in the power of nature, the challenges we face in a world where these events seem to be becoming more and more frequent.
It is. And it underscores the need to be prepared, not just on an individual level, but as communities, as a society. Because the next Milton, it's not a matter of if, but when. And the more we can learn from this one, the better equipped we'll be to weather the next storm in every sense of the word.
You know, it's easy to focus on the destruction, the sheer power of it all. But amidst the chaos, there have been these incredible stories of, well, just human resilience.
It's true. You hear about the sheriff who rescued that teenager from the floodwaters, and it's like, wow, talk about a close call.
Right. It makes you realize that even in these situations, these incredibly difficult moments, there's this amazing capacity for compassion, for people helping people.
Absolutely. It's not just the first responders either. You see it in communities all over, neighbors helping neighbors, people coming together to provide food, shelter, support. It's a powerful reminder that even when things seem bleak, there's this underlying strength in human connection.
That's like a silver lining, right?
Yeah.
And it makes you think, maybe, just maybe, we're more prepared for whatever comes next than we realize. Maybe not in terms of infrastructure, though that's obviously crucial, but in terms of our ability to come together to support one another when it really matters.
I think you've hit on something there. Preparedness, it's not just about having the right gear or knowing the evacuation routes. It's about building those social connections, strengthening the fabric of our communities.
Because when the storm hits, and it will, it's often those personal bonds that make all the difference. But let's be real, this isn't a one-off, right? Climate change is the big elephant in the room.
Yeah.
We're likely to see more frequent, more intense hurricanes in the future. So the big question is, where do we go from here? What are the key takeaways?
Well, the first step is acknowledging the reality we're facing. Climate change is real, it's happening, and it's impacting these extreme weather events. And once we've acknowledged that, then we can start demanding action from our leaders, from corporations, and from ourselves.
It can feel overwhelming, though, right? Like, what can one person really do in the face of something this big?
I hear you. But the thing is, every action, no matter how small, it creates a ripple effect. It's about changing our habits, making sustainable choices, and yes, using our voices to push for bigger systemic changes.
So it's not about despair, it's about action. It's about channeling that feeling of this is messed up into something constructive.
Exactly. And we all have a role to play in that. It's not just about protecting ourselves from future storms. It's about protecting our planet, ensuring a livable future for generations to come.
Well said. It feels like we've covered a lot of ground here. From alligators in the streets to the future of Florida's barrier islands, it's been quite a deep dive.
It has. And it's really got me thinking about the complex relationship between humans and the natural world. We're part of it, not separate from it.
That's a powerful reminder. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap things up. Thanks to everyone for joining us for another deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay safe out there.